We just got done interviewing Jim Phillips about grid down and the real possibility that that is going to happen, and maybe in the very near future. This caused Kylene and I to think about, are we prepared to deal with that situation? So listen in on our very interesting conversation. Hey, Provident Preppers, I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Kylene. And today we want to invite you to a real conversation that we're going to have. We interviewed Jim Phillips, who is a preparedness expert, and about the reality that grid down, his opinion is it's not if it's going to happen, it's when, and it's more likely to happen sooner than later. And so we've got these 9 categories that Jim talks about, and we felt the need to go ahead and sit down and see where we stand in each one of those, but be warned, because Jonathan and I don't always agree on the best approach or the right approach. So just know that we still love each other, but I think it's very valuable for you to see that even though this is what we do, and we do this all the time, we might not be as prepared as we would like to be. We need to talk about first, we do a lot of this. One of the best things that you can do to evaluate your actual level of preparedness is to practice. And we turned out the power just to see if we could survive. We went grid down cooking for 30 days where we didn't use any electric or anything except alternative cooking methods. That was really rough, but we did it and we learned a lot. And then we also went for 90 days living off of just our food storage and what we could grow. And that was really an eye-opener. So the practicing is important. You don't have to do as extreme as we have done, but I just think about the things that you could do maybe to practice and really evaluate it. So
these 2 steps, I think, are truly important, that we take some time to evaluate. And you do this with your family, your loved ones. Maybe it's just with yourself, but whoever needs to be in that conversation, evaluate where you are, and then practice, I think, is a really good point.
So do we need like a referee or something?
None available. We'll survive or we won't.
Jim explains more of this in his video, and so I'll leave a link to the video that we interviewed him so you can get all the gory details. But the first category is the foundation. Pretty much that's what is your reason to live?
Attitude.
Attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah, attitude. So
you have attitude. She has serious attitude.
Oh, he's starting this already.
But we're not talking about that kind of attitude.
Yeah,
we're talking about your attitude. When something bad happens, is it dropping into the dumps, or is it saying, okay, I'm not wild about this. I'm going to get through this, and my best days are yet to come.
Yeah, reason to live. And so when I was kind of evaluating my reason to live, it revolves so much around my family. And we prepare for our family. And yes, I feel confident that I have a reason to live and that I really am okay getting through really tough times. How do you feel about that?
And we can include in that family our community. So it's not just our family, but we have a lot of loved ones and friends and people that we work closely with that believe like we do, and we work to complement each other and to be a community. So yeah, I think
we're okay there.
Yeah, we're good.
We're okay there.
We're
okay.
Good.
So number 2, why don't you do this one?
Okay, clothing. And he talks about the importance of clothing, being able to stay warm, being able to stay cool.
In your own house, we're considering that you have shelter.
Yeah, you can stay in your own home, but how are you going to get through, particularly for us, the cold?
Yeah.
And so having that clothing to help get through that. So
the clothing and the bedding and everything that we need. So like in our power outage experiment, let me tell you, I got really, really cold. And the thing that I learned, which, it already makes me like upset about the hat thing.
Yeah.
So to make a long story short, we are living in this grid down power outage thing, right? And I've got all these little kids at home and I am freezing, and I've done it for a few days and I think, I'm so proud of myself. I've made it so far. It was supposed to go for a week, but I'm done. And so I called John to tell him I'm done. And he is actually in an office, a heated office building. and he has his heater off in his office, his personal office. Like, how cold can he get there? So I tell him, oh, I've done such a good job and I'm done. And he tells me to put on a hat. Oh my goodness.
Glad I wasn't there.
Yeah.
In person.
Yeah, he wouldn't be here in person if he had been there at that time.
But did it work?
But it totally worked. I learned something. So when we're looking at clothing, being able to have the right clothing to keep you warm, and things, hats and gloves that you would normally wear outside, but you can wear them inside to keep you warm, that needs to be in that category. Yeah. Number 3 is water. So John, how are we doing on water?
So critical to have water. I think we're actually doing fairly well on our storage, and that is your first leg. There is having that water stored. That's your best, cleanest, safest water, easy to access. But then you also have to have the ability to collect and process water. And I think overall we're doing pretty well there. There's probably a little bit of improvement that we can make.
Right.
But we're moving in that direction and making progress. What do you think?
And so I think that's great because for those of you that may have been watching our videos, we installed some underground rainwater catchment systems so that we could catch water, because we live in the middle of a desert. Like, it's not like I can go across the street and get some water. And so for us, that's really valuable. But I do think some of that water is pretty old, and maybe it's time to rotate some of that and do a little bit better. I think maybe with our filters, we need to do a little bit more education with the kids and the grandkids on actually how to use that. So maybe at our family reunion, we could do a little bit of that education.
This is going too well.
Oh, wait. Just wait.
Okay. All right.
Oh, one of the other things that we have done with water. So I'm the crazy plant lady, and we have, like, I've got this food forest kind of growing in our little homestead. And I have put massive amounts of wood chips on a lot of the trees and the bushes and the perennials, because that helps us use significantly less water. And that means that during a real crisis, when I can't water any of my plants and my trees, they're going to do okay, because we've dug these swales and it's kind of the permaculture approach. And so, yeah, they're not going to be super happy, but we should still be able to produce and not have them all die. So that's another thing we've done with the water.
Yeah, I think that fits very nicely.
Okay, number 5.
Well, we got to go to 4 first.
Oh, this is yours.
Okay.
Oh, this is
sanitation.
His favorite
I
topic.
love to talk about sanitation.
He does. That's weird.
That's weird. But it's so important. It's kind of the overlooked thing that we sometimes don't think about. The ability to, not only have water, but to be able to have water to use for sanitation purposes, and making sure that, we know how to keep things clean. It encompasses a lot of things, but I think overall we're doing pretty well. We've put plans in place to be able to handle this. We've got a couple of porta potties. What else? So,
and part of it is the knowledge with sanitation, because the feces and the urine, the feces is like toxic, right? We've got to make sure that we're disposing of that appropriately. Whereas urine, we can kind of let some of the grandkids free range, or we can dispose of it where it's actually benefiting our plants. But when it comes to the feces, you have to be super, super careful about how you do that. And so we've got some videos on that. But okay, to make a long story short, I think we're okay in this department. We have a plan, and we have the resources and the tools that we need, except he's been wanting a composting toilet for a while.
Yeah.
So I don't know how soon that's going to fit into our budget, but a composting toilet would be amazing.
It's a reasonably good option, and maybe someday. Working on it. And that's what we're doing, taking little steps.
Yeah, and you have to be careful, right? We can't go out and buy everything, because every little step that we make toward being more prepared is good, but being in debt, that's not so good. That's really not a good idea. So we got to make do, and we got to budget, and that's important. Number 5 on Jim's list is nutrition, and I think it's interesting that food, which food storage is what we talk about all the time, right, actually doesn't make its way down until number 5.
Right.
And
because those other things can kill you pretty fast. I could probably stand to lose a few pounds, and so, I could go a week or two without food and I'd still be okay.
But if I go for that long without food, now I know I could and I'd probably live, but I'm not sure that all the people around me would live.
It could be really serious.
It could be serious.
Really serious.
So food for us, food for me, actually it's chocolate for me, is pretty high on the list. And I know that I make that joke all the time, but if I'm really cold, I'm not a nice person. If I'm really hungry, I'm not a nice person.
And so
in order to make me a nice person, we have to really meet my needs.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think we're doing pretty well on that. We're trying to live what we teach, and
we're doing pretty good. So there's a few different categories that I'd like to talk about here. The first is expedient, is what expedient food storage is what Jim Phillips calls it. And pretty much we call that a short-term food supply. That's what you stock in your pantry, cans that you can just open and eat. And that's really important. I think we're doing well on that.
Yeah.
And we've got some canned foods that we rotate through. The long-term food storage, those are things that are packaged so that they'll last longer, 25, 30 years. No, we don't want to leave them in storage that long. But those are the longer-term things that provide the basic calories that you would need to survive if things got really, really bad. Our long-term food storage, we rotate through that with our regular food supply as much as possible. And then the other thing is being able to produce some of your own food, right? So that over the long haul, because when the grid goes down, suddenly food is not going to be able to be in your market, right? The beautiful fresh food that we have right now is going to be non-existent, and we're going to have to be able to survive on what we can grow ourselves. And so for us, John's really tolerant with this because I love getting, my hands dirty and getting in the dirt and playing with the plants, and I love all that. He doesn't, but he kind of agrees with the philosophy behind it. I
totally agree. I think everybody should have a garden. I think that is truly an important part of our plan, whether that's a little small garden or a big garden.
Our plan is to be able to grow enough that we will be able to share with neighbors and friends and be able to kind of barter, right? Because I have the ability to do that, but there are places where we're lacking. And so, we have friends who have cows. And so if we're going to want fresh milk and not just powdered milk, man, let's see what we can get for a case of raspberries, right? Or anyway, so that's our plan there, and I think we're doing pretty good. Is there anything we need to improve in there?
Oh, I'm sure there's things we can improve on, but we're making those steps, and I think we're in a good place.
Okay. Number 6 is shelter.
Right. And we talked a little bit about this before. Maybe you live in a really hot area, like some of our kids live in Arizona. Ooh, too hot for me.
I would melt. I would not make it.
We live in a cold zone, way too cold for them. We try and get them to come home, and nah. They like the heat.
In the summertime, they'll come home.
So how are hopefully you are still in your home, and the home does provide a good amount of shelter. But how are you going to deal with hot temperatures or cold temperatures, whatever your extremes are? And
the other point that Jim makes is evacuating, right?
Right.
So if you need to evacuate and you have to have a shelter beside your home, what is your plan, right? Sometimes people have the recreational vehicles, they've got tents. Best idea is to have some place to be able to go, whether it's one of your kids, Uncle Bob, but wherever you're going to go, you have to know how you're going to get there, and then they need to be ready to receive you. So that might mean that you have part of your food storage at their home and just call it an insurance policy, right? So we've got to figure that out in advance because shelter is really, really important.
It truly is. And overall, I think we're doing pretty well there. What could we improve on?
So I think that we've got the plan with our kids, but I think maybe it would be a good idea to do a better job of stocking their homes with extra food for us. Especially because sometimes the food that I eat is different than what they're eating.
That is true.
And then
is true.
we're prepared for our children to come here. And so we've got some different things that we have in place for that, but we have a small house. There's not enough room for everybody to sleep, right? And so if they are really going to come here, they might need to have some kind of shelter.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. We'll see.
Good point.
We'll see. They can sleep on the couch, right? But there's not
I've
enough
done
couches.
it a few times.
Well, if you just behave yourself. All right. Number 7. This is a very interesting category. So this is wellness, and there's a whole bunch involved in that.
Oh, yeah. Everything from communications, which is emotional wellness, right? The ability to communicate, to understand the world, but also maybe to be able to communicate with our kids and our community. And that is one thing that I am working on. I'm working on a communication plan for our community. That adds a lot of wellness, emotional wellness. And what else?
And sometimes somebody has to spearhead that. And we can wish that somebody would do it for us, but sometimes that means that you just have to really, like John is, just
step up and do it.
He's going to step up and do it. The other thing that comes in here is relationships. And this has been a big goal of ours this year. And much to John's sorrow, I did order a whole bunch of new games. Because I think games are really important. A couple of weeks ago, we had a bunch of our friends over for a Friday night, and we were playing games, and we had a great time. But all of that builds relationships. When Jim talks about it, when you break bread with somebody, you don't have to talk about preparedness, right? It's about building those relationships. So we have planned a lot and gone out of our way to build some more of those relationships, because they are really, really important, more important than you might realize.
Yeah. And then things like first aid and what else do you need to be well? Different medicines or whatever is going to keep you well in every area, physically, spiritually, emotionally, socially.
And so for us, I grow a lot of medicinal herbs in the garden. And one of my goals is just to learn how to use them better. I'm trying, I make soaps and I make salves and we incorporate some of that in, but I would love to take it to a whole nother level. The other thing in this category for wellness is actually personal and family protection. During a grid down situation, we would expect a lot of lawlessness. We would expect for things just to get really hard and for the worst to come out in some people. And so we need to make sure.
And the best in others.
And the best in others.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that we are ready to protect our family. Some of the things like just this morning, there's all kinds of different lines of defense. And I'm trying to make our property more and more secure. We've got areas where, like, I've got the black raspberries growing, which you would be crazy to climb that fence, right? And it's not that you couldn't, you would hurt afterwards, but, and then we would have to employ a different level of defense if you got through there. But just this morning, I planted a bunch of gooseberries, which are very, very thorny on the outside of one of our fences. And so we're just trying to plan this. We're still trying to find a good security door for the front door. We haven't, the bids that we got for it, we're way out of our budget. And so we're trying to figure out something there, because that's one of the things that we need to do. So the physical security for your home, making it a less appealing target for other people.
Okay, so I think we're working on some things there.
Yeah,
including
constantly.
Me being a little more outgoing socially. I like just kind of tucking away. And anyway, enough of that. Number 8 is tools, and this can include all kinds of tools. What tools do you need, do you use on a daily basis, and do you have perhaps the ability to do some of those things without powered tools?
Okay, and so let's think about it. In the tools category, I think that alternative cooking tools would come into that. And one of the best things that I think is out there right now is actually the Vesta. Our friend Connell, he's the inventor of it, but the Vesta uses canned heat, which is safe to burn indoors, and it can be used as a heater or as a cooker and cook your food. It's an amazing little device. There hasn't been anything like that. And so one of the things that we did do this year was the fire pit.
Yeah.
We poured a really safe fire pit. It's nice and large, and we did it for a couple reasons. One, for cooking, but another one for being able to burn the trash if we need to very safely so that it couldn't get away from anybody. I also burned some of my trimmings in it from my yard. So it has a bunch of different things, but then also it was about relationships, right? Having the people over and doing s'mores or hot dogs or whatever there. So there were a bunch of different reasons why we did that, but tools are really important. My garden tools, I am constantly buying more and stocking up because having one just isn't going to work. The pruners, I mean, things break, and so lots of tools that way. Backup power is another thing. Having a little bit of electricity, so having a device that can be charged with solar or having a generator, all of those fall under tools. And I think we're doing pretty well there.
Yeah. One of the things we want to work on is some transportation, some e-bikes, so that we can charge them with solar. And we'll do a video on those coming up probably fairly soon, but that's one of our things that we really want to do, is have the ability to have transportation. Bikes, I think, is a good plan.
I do too, but I'm getting a trike, not a bike, because I'm a little bit unstable sometimes because of the MS, and so I have to do what works for me and not what works for him.
Yeah.
All right, and the final one, number 9, is supplies. So in supplies, everything just falls into this category. Usually it's more the consumable stuff, as firewood or like the canned heat that you would use in the Vesta, or so different kinds of fuel, anything that kind of is consumable. But one of the other things in supplies, this one kind of could fall under wellness, but I think it's better under supplies. Jace Medical has what they call a Jace case that has the emergency antibiotics in it. And I just ordered a new one, and I'm so excited because I think having those antibiotics, if the grid is down and you don't have access to medicine, some emergency antibiotics could be really, really important. They also have something called Jace Daily, where you can get some of your prescription medications, like a year's supply of it ahead, from a licensed physician, and that makes it really nice. It is expensive because you don't have insurance to cover it, right? So I'd look at Jace and just see if any of that works for you. I'll leave a link in the description of the video. But different supplies. When COVID happened, can I say that word? Is it okay to say that word now?
No.
When that thing happened, suddenly we couldn't get canning lids anymore. And so that's one of those supplies that I've made a conscious effort to keep stocked, because suddenly 12 canning lids were $8, if you could find them at all. So just those supplies, whatever makes sense to you. Don't go crazy. Don't go crazy over any of this. But what makes sense in your life and your situation, I would stock up on it.
And one of the things to consider here is this seems a little overwhelming, but don't let it overwhelm you. Break it down. That's part of what this is all about, is breaking things down and then taking a step at a time in whatever area you can. And sometimes, most of the time, almost all of the time, it's not as fast as we would like.
And don't be motivated by fear. Let's be motivated by the joy and helping others and making sure that our kids are okay. Focus on the positive, because quite frankly, people lived without electricity a long time, generations and generations, for thousands of years. Our problem is we're dependent on it. So if we can put in place different things so that our family isn't as dependent upon it, we're going to be okay. Make some friends, build some relationships, because we don't want to do this alone. We want to work together and do things together.
Now for the question of the day. What videos or other content can we create to help you be more prepared to live in a grid down situation or whatever may come? Comment below. And thanks for being part of the solution.